All right. Welcome, everybody. We're back the day before the holiday. This is the B2B Growth Lab, usual suspects present. And today we're talking about, systems, scaling support, retention, all underneath the umbrella of customer success. And really, what's it like to have a team that focuses on it? When to build one, how to build one, or in my opinion, and with the theme of the last couple of shows that we had, when to install it as a part of your culture. Right? We dug deep on that recently. But just the idea that you don't grow to a certain size and then say, now we focus on customer service. What about starting? What about having a department before you have enough people to call it one? So yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And who wants to take the lead on this?
I'll go ahead and jump in here. Any business that tries to start without someone taking ownership of the customer support and success function is basically following an exercise in futility.
I like it.
Yeah. And it could look really different in many different businesses. Like, imagine, if you will, you had 8 to 10 salespeople and your business was doing pretty well, but you had no back office customer support. So your salespeople were spending 70% of their time doing low-grade admin work and entering things in systems, and right. So you don't only need infrastructure, but you also need, until you get that infrastructure and automation, a certain amount of back office customer service help and support. So your salespeople can be out there being the tip of the spear, hunting revenue, not keep punching orders, not making follow-up phone calls when something went wrong, right? Not right.
Yeah.
Sell it, and then immediately get some support going for your customers immediately.
And I like the exploration we had recently about what's it like to consider that part of the pre-transaction process, right? Like, how do we solve for before onboarding and then make sure it stays great? I guess how do you keep it at a level?
The best experiences I've had have been, I got introduced to that service person before I was even implemented. Like, somewhere in the middle of the sales process, you started to get acclimated to the person who was going to manage your account once we finished implementation. So exactly what you're talking about, rich experience, no handoff needed. One person just disappeared and we already had a relationship. So love that, Jacob. Love that.
Okay.
The other thing that I've heard is that, at least this is a trend that I've kind of started seeing in SaaS, is having your customer support person be the same person that closes the sale, right? And it's tricky because basically what you're saying is that my customer support is my sales team. And when you do that, you completely balloon that organization in that department. And it makes it really difficult because you can be a jack of all trades, but the rest of the phrase is jack of all trades, master of none, but better than master of one. So it's tricky to figure out the dynamics of that. And I think it's better to just do two things, frankly. One is follow a TQM strategy, which is total quality management. Everyone in the organization is responsible for the quality of the outcomes that you deliver to your customers. That's number one. Number two is exactly what you were both talking about, making sure that the handoff is smooth. And before they even close, I was just having a call with so-and-so, and I thought I'd bring him on because if you decide to go with us, then Rob is going to be your go-to person for this. And if you have any questions about the software, he'd be a great guy to ask right now on this call because he can tell you how to get what you want out of it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I was doing a consult recently, and we got involved in this conversation because like the context of the conversation was, what does the future of this business look like? And so while we were having this discussion, and it was myself, the CEO, and the president. So I guess vision and daily operations. It's not a very big team. We've got a ton of staff, like a 10-person exec. But what really became clearer and clearer was not just that everybody's responsible for customer success, not just that everybody's responsible for customer experience. We couldn't actually define the difference in the role between an account manager and the customer success person. And that was kind of my thinking about this is, well, it's great because this is a small team. So one person has to do both of those jobs. But what about instead of, while you grow, you then have two people and the either or? It's like, how are you growing this thing inside of it that always does those things, right? Whether it's one person or 12, it's still everyone's responsibility to manage the account and have success for the customer.
I love that. That makes so much sense to me because, again, like we've talked about in the past, if you put your customer front and center in everything that you do, you're going to say, I just need one person who's going to be the point of contact for this person every time they have a question about the software, every time they have a problem that needs to be solved. I just want them going to one person because it's going to save them a huge headache, particularly in B2B SaaS. Like, okay. I can't tell you how many times I have just wished that for the software that I'm working with or that I'm helping my clients work with, that I had one person that I had to reach out to. And it was just like, this is your guy in our company. And that guy handles maybe 50 accounts. And his job is once a month, he calls through those 50 accounts, answers any questions that they have. They know he's their guy. They can reach out with any problems. Like, think of the results, how that would impact time to value for your clients if you were to implement something like that in your organization. Think of how much more in depth your understanding of your customer would be, right? You get all of those those account executives together, those account managers together in a room, and you say, draw me a picture of our customer. Tell me, what are their biggest problems? What are their biggest pain points? What's keeping them up at night? Because that's your job to know. And then as the CRO, you're starting to get this intelligence. As the CMO, you're saying, oh, if that's what they're really focused on, hey, Bob from account management, come tell me what you think of this marketing campaign. Well, I really like it, but I think they wouldn't use the word vibe. I think they'd use the word jam. Great.
Got it. So I guess the question I have then is it sounds to me like this is actually quite scalable, because if you have your point person, then let me put it to you this way. This is why I like partnering with fractionals, because they know oftentimes more about what's breaking inside the business than the actual client. And so I'm thinking about this point person also being the same thing of like, here's the breakdown between the customer and the service. And, you can give them pathways of, red phone into tech support, red phone into billing, but they can translate. And then they say the customer explaining the same thing over and over as they climb up the phone tree, more annoyed, right? 5-minute hold time in between.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that is something that's more scalable, and it shows that you care. And the opportunities for upselling in that situation are far greater because you've built that relationship of trust and respect and understanding, so that they say, yeah, you know what? I really do care what Jacob thinks about this. If he thinks that I would do a better job of getting this output or this outcome with this add-on, let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. it greases the skids so much more for things like that, because you build that relationship. And people buy based off of buy from people that they know, like, and trust.
Right. So
when you get big enough, don't you end up with a team approach? And we introduce the concept of ownership, but you have the robust support structure of an aligned team, all who have access to the same information, whose comments get shared, right? CRM, et cetera, insert all the infrastructure here. But then we solve the vacation problem without going to the anonymous solution, right? So does the salesperson really own the customer relationship? Yes. Can the internal salesperson sell into that? Yes. Manage the comp plan. Everyone gets paid some share, right? You figure all that out. But then the customer's not high and dry just because Rob had to be on site at blankety blank customer today and they didn't have to wait, right? So you improve the service to the customer while maintaining continuity. You put the ownership in the right place. I think ultimately sometimes then the customer gets a better experience when you get big enough to offer that kind of team approach to service the customer.
I have a very recent case study in this, and I was actually thinking of these calls and both of you in the last week or so, because locally, a few smaller banks became one, and they, of course, like redeployed. We have a new site, it's new tech, it's this. Here's the date that the migration starts. Expect this and this not to work, and then this to start working. And I didn't touch any of it because I play in the technology space enough. And like, it's going to be garbage for the first 4 days after they say go. It didn't even bother logging in. But then I showed up day 4, 5, 6, like, and I couldn't believe that 3 days after they said we're back online, I called in twice during that day because, of course, things weren't working. It's like, you are number 73 in the queue.
Right.
Which, I hung up. I'm like, I'll come back after the weekend. Right. But it was amazing to me to think, who are the providers of this technology? Is this their first time? They couldn't advise the powers that be. You're going to want to double, triple, quadruple, hire 170 new people to be on the phones for a week. Right? Like, because I was number 70 in the queue on Friday, and like, I did a test piece. I had other things to do, but I put myself on hold. I was only in the 30s, and it took over an hour to speak to someone.
Oh, man.
Which tells me how much worse it was the week before. And so I'm just, been given this real life experience of like, what was it? A top down decision making thing? Where they're like, let's just do this as cheap as possible. Which is what the experience was. Or was it the people who were providing the technological solution just completely lied about their ability to facilitate, deploy? Like, I have to make all this stuff up because there's no communication there. But I'd be really interested in your thoughts, right?
Go ahead, Rob. I'm curious what you take.
Yeah.
Restaurants do a soft open. Mm-hmm. Why? To avoid this, right? Mm-hmm. When I launch learning management systems, we stand it up and run everything a week before we send out passwords and announce it's live, right? So find your few people to do, it's not even beta testing, to do your implementation validation, the final step of your QA, before you send out the bulk email that says, blah, blah, blah is live, let's go, and you test it. I mean, you gotta give yourself some space to move. Otherwise, you end up with that call queue. You end up with all that customer dissatisfaction. And in banking, you've never seen people more angry than screwing with their money, right?
Especially since it rolled over the 1st, and with the bank holiday on the 1st in July. Like,
Oh, don't do that. Don't do
that's
So-
kind of why I wanted to ask you guys is like, again, we have to make it up, but can we come up with a laundry list of mistakes that they potentially made? Because it seems like there's 70 or
Oh, yeah.
so.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they understaffed their call center for starters. Like Rob said, they probably didn't do enough QA testing. They also didn't think through, like, could we migrate these people in like tranches, right?
Yes.
They probably didn't think about, oh, gee, if we're doing this on the 1st, which in Canada is a bank holiday, it's Dominion Day. Like, what are people going to think, right? And so my first job was I did maintenance for storage units. My second job, the first job was enough for me to know I never want to work in blue collar again. The second job was as a bank teller. And one of the things that they told us is when you mess with people's money,
Yes.
they go from 0 to 160 like that. And I experienced it when I worked at Wells Fargo during the Wachovia merger. They bought Wachovia out because they wanted the customer service. And people were asking, like, are you worried about this? They were asking their competition, and their competitors said no. And they're like, why? I mean, they're going to become one of the largest banks in the United States. And they said, well, they bought Wachovia for customer service.
Right.
You think that they're going to get that culture of customer service like that? You're smoking something.
Right.
And so it's like with something like this, they probably were buying, like, the mergers that were happening here was probably so that they could get access to more capital, so that they could invest in larger projects that they had sitting on the back end that were going to be far more profitable than their retail banking side. And so to me, it was like all of this was probably an afterthought.
Right. It's super interesting. I worked to be as gracious as I could because the frontline people obviously weren't making any of the choices.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely not.
Right? Like, you
Right.
can't log in. Oh, okay, here's my keyboard. Key your password in. Like, I use password software. It's like 36 characters and most of them are insane.
Right.
You have to type it for me because the browser doesn't let you copy paste. And
Uh-huh.
just these like moments where it's just like, wow, somebody up here hung you out to dry.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely they did. And they did it without a second thought because, again, they knew that they would get access to bigger, better deals with higher rates of return because they were a larger organization and they don't care about the retail banking side. This is
Right.
one of the things that really irks me is that most of the time when businesses make those kinds of decisions, the customer comes second. When you reach a certain size of organization, you care more about preserving your status and getting access to greater status, getting access to the cooler parties, the cooler cocktail dinners, right? All of the stuff, like getting into the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller niche of cool kids. That's all you care about. You really don't care about the customer. Do you honestly think that Jeff Bezos right now gives a damn what I do on Amazon or my experience with Amazon.com? Because I sure don't.
Right. Right. Yeah. So frontline customer service, these poor people are just struggling. I am managing my demeanor. I imagine others aren't. Right. I'm sure some people are coming in making threats, and why wouldn't they? But how far up do you think that goes, and how much of it do you think were words they put on a pamphlet or on a wall or sent out to team emails, right? Knowing we're just going to wing it, right? Like, get used to people screaming at you. Here we go.
I have to believe that to be able to run an organization that large, you have to have some level of forethought. So I have to believe that they did do some level of forethought. And I think that the people who were testing the technology didn't do a good enough job, but like the people on the ground who were facing the customers, they care about the customers, and the people higher up in the organization care about their team, right? And so I have to believe, giving the most generous interpretation of this scenario, that they cared about their team enough to try and give them some tools, but it's like, yeah, this is a shit show and I don't know how to fix it. And so it's like you do your best and you just say, I'm probably, as a result of this, going to see a 30% turnover in my team because they're just going to be so emotionally exhausted by the way that people treat them at the end of this that they're going to be unsalvageable.
So technology updates happen all the time, and I'm hearing stuff leaning towards, a lot of Rob's input over previous episodes about how do you have a culture, value your people, make sure that the internal stuff is so high that the external stuff is really. So, how would you have solved for this, Rob? What are some of the contingencies or aftermath fixes?
Culture change is hard. It's hard. And whether or not you need to do it and being real about it. The example that I was thinking of is, say you were a cable TV provider and you were the only game in town for a long time until technology came for all your business. And you had named yourself something that lent itself to a very unfortunate nickname because you had bad service. Did you have to fix it even though people were calling you that dirty name? No, you didn't really have to.
Right.
But then when technology showed up and you weren't the only game in town, all of a sudden we need to rebrand ourselves something new and exciting. Right?
Right.
So that's the reality of sometimes we don't value customer service. We just rebrand ourselves to get rid of our dirty nickname associated with bad service when the market conditions dictate that our current castle, our position, is no longer a castle, right?
Yeah.
Right? Now we have to compete. Okay, let's rebrand ourselves. We can't suffer this way. So, does competition promote generally better service in a very low service economy or segment? Could service potentially be a competitive differentiator? Like, think, how good do you really need to be to set yourself apart from, I'm not even going to say their name, right? I don't want to get subpoenaed, but
Yeah.
you don't have to be that good. You don't
Right.
have to be that good. There's an opportunity in the market if your customer service is just halfway good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's.
Right.
Chick-fil-A, it's good, right? It's good food, but it's like it's not like a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, right? It's not like it's Chick-fil-A. But people love to go to Chick-fil-A because everything you do, it's always their pleasure to serve you, right? And that is just that one little thing that puts you above your competition, makes you top of mind, makes you stand out.
Right.
And I will say this, Chick-fil-A, I think, does it the right way, where they start at the culture and they consistently focus on the foundation. It makes me think of like nations, right? And like as nations grow, nations that forget their founding mythos will fall apart. It's just an unwritten law of history. Maybe somebody wrote it, I don't know, but they always fall apart. When civic literacy goes out the door, it falls apart. When your organizational literacy, when you understand why your organization is founded and you have that grounding in that mythos, that customer service becomes much, much easier. And it becomes something that binds the organization together and keeps that customer front and center.
Right. It's especially true in highly competitive and luxury markets.
Right.
Especially true.
Unless you're Coco Chanel. No one wants to kick over that dirty log.
I think if you walk into an Elocitan or an Aveda or a Tricoci, right? You walk into any of those places, and I haven't needed a haircut in a year or two. But I still know what the service standard is and what the expectations are in those places. And it's real and it's competitive, and it's how they maintain their brand position, right? That is their segment and they own it. And just like Chick-fil-A, it's the entirety of that customer experience, what it smells like, what it sounds like, what it looks like when you walk in the door. And it's how the people greet you, right? How they talk to you, how they stand up and are composed and appropriately assertive and kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's the entirety of the customer experience, and
Yes.
customer service is part of that whole puzzle.
And then there's,
and it's got,
go ahead.
Just really quick adding to that, it's got to be like the foundational part of the puzzle, right? It's like when you build a puzzle, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but my wife and I, we always start with the outside, the edges, and then you work in. It's like that customer support has to be the edges of the puzzle, right? You have to understand, what do they want from me? What's the bare minimum? Now, how can I go and make this exceed expectations consistently every time they log into the software? How can I make sure that we are exceeding expectations every time they come into the jewelry store, every time they get their haircut, every time they sit down for a steak, every time they get their tires rotated, right? Like, that is part of what your vision for your organization has to be. And it's got to be so deeply intertwined within the fabric of your culture that it would be impossible to separate it from your team. Your team, like, if you tried to tell them, hey, we just want you to focus on quotas, they would feel like a fish out of water, because
Right.
it would be so ingrained in them.
Right.
Well, that's really well said. It reminds me of a call I had recently, and we're just in the inquiry stage with this company that, gentleman's goal is to triple an exit. But as much as you got to start with the vision of what the numbers for tripling are, my favorite thing about working with him so far, just interacting, right? We're not even providing a service yet, is how people-centric all of his thinking is. He really knows that his, customers and care providers are the most important thing. And when I asked a question about like putting this into place, his first thought was, how does it impact them? Right. And I'd say those couple of hours we've spent having conversations have been so informative and telling. Like, this guy probably does have a chance of tripling his business because he's so focused on those things. But it's what I'm realizing listening to you guys talk is how that's not something I hear every single time.
Right.
Right.
A lot of that vision for growth is pure metric, outcome focused, and not much like, and we're going to have to do all of this to get there.
Yeah.
Right? Because the other part of exiting is having this brand that somebody else is going to want, right? Not this thing that you've kind of sort of half cooked and maybe get away with selling.
Right.
Well, it's so true. I was, so I don't know if you guys have noticed this weird phenomenon over the last 5 years of axe throwing becoming as popular
Yes.
as bowling in the United States. Like, it's super weird.
Like, it's a fun thing like darts. It's not just a lumberjack sport.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, so where I live, we have, I don't understand how we have the population to support this, but we have 2 lumberjack axe throwing locations, 2 different businesses, not one. And I took my wife to one because apparently we're both really good at axe throwing. And we're sitting there and we're talking with the girls who manage the store, right?
Mhm.
And we're talking, and I was like, so like, what do you know about the business? Like, tell me, because I'm weird and I always ask these questions.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, the owners want to grow the business. They're probably looking at franchising. And I'm like, how the heck are they going to franchise this thing? And they're like, well, they think they've got a really good brand. And I'm like, yeah, but there's no secret sauce. Like, I
Right.
literally could start up another one of these,
Right.
in the neighboring town without any problems, right? Like, you don't have any special distributors that I need to buy through. You don't have any special, secret sauce, special weapons that I can throw. Like,
Right.
you have a rage room attached to your axe throwing. Okay, right? But your brand isn't even that great. It's not that strong. So like, how are they going to hope to franchise this? To this day, 4 years later, they still haven't franchised because
Right.
they can't.
They can't.
Have you been to both locations?
I have.
Have you entered and left and gone, oh my God, that one felt so much better to be inside of? Or was there any difference there for you?
There was absolutely no difference. They felt
Okay.
completely interchangeable. And I
Right.
think that here's the thing. There could theoretically be an opportunity for them to like up the service level and really quote unquote Disneyfy this thing, right? Where,
Mhm.
you think about your experience in Disneyland, at least the way it used to be, where no one points with one finger. It's always two fingers. And everyone is a guest, and everyone who works there is a cast member, and we're always on stage, and we're trying to make this experience magical. Like, they could do that and they could make it a better experience. But to me, it always felt the same. I felt like I was walking into a factory and I was throwing an axe at some logs and I was entertaining myself or staving off boredom. It didn't feel like a destination experience to me.
Okay.
Sure, maybe the first time I did it, it felt interesting. But after that, it was like, this is the same as every other one I've gone to. There is literally no difference. It's very similar to escape rooms in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff is sold that way, right? Like novelty up front, not about the reoccurring, the lifetime, the high value. Like, this is a really common thing. And with a business like that, of course, you just have to keep shoving more lead generation into the front of the pipeline because that's your only answer.
Well,
Yeah.
and the unfortunate thing is, I'm going to say this and then I'll shut up because Rob, I can tell you want to say something. The unfortunate thing that I've noticed is, particularly in B2B SaaS, that is the most common model. They hit
Yeah.
about 2 to 3 million in revenue. They assume they have product market fit because they have, $2 to 3 million in revenue. I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Then they scale the crap out of their sales team because as long as I am putting more people through the funnel than are leaving the funnel, I have net growth.
Right.
And they found their whole organization on this. Domo, which is a business intelligence software, has been doing this. And they have found that it's finally caught up with them. And they are having like major issues, like 25% customer turnover year
Wow.
over year. Massive. And they're a 9-10 figure organization. Like, you can't be a 9-10 figure organization and have that level of customer turnover and still survive. Like, it really does catch up with you. All right, I'll shut up.
How many strip mall cookie delivery places do we need?
Oh, geez.
That is a great question.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fool's born every minute. Not that everyone who starts those franchises and rents a strip mall space for a couple grand a month is a fool, but boy, the franchise consultants want to sell those, and boy, people want to work for themselves, and they trust a trusted model, but do they do their homework? Is the due diligence really there? Is there a market? It's the same thought that makes you want to franchise axe throwing, right?
Yeah.
It's just another thing. Unless it's another unique, unless there's some barrier to entry, some unique value prop,
Right.
so there's nothing there. There's not
Yeah.
a it's you can do the same thing at home in your oven. I mean,
And
It's a
unlike
laziness play. You're curing laziness. Okay.
unlike the axes, there is no necessarily viable reason for you to leave Facebook Marketplace and open the location.
Right.
Like you can probably scale the home cookie thing, right? And not open the strip mall and not spend the upfront. And the axes are harder to scale at home or in your yard, but
You know, it's interesting because I have a guy, one of my friends, he owns 3 of those cookie franchises, and they are killing it. Um, and he also owns in his house an axe throwing.
Stop
He
it.
made himself. He made himself. But I think you're absolutely right. It's like people think they want to work for themselves, but when they realize how hard it is,
Oh,
like most people don't realize just how stressful and difficult working for yourself is, right? It's in Western society, particularly in the United States. I don't know how it is in Canada, Jacob. You could give some really interesting insight here, but in the United States, it's like entrepreneurship is pushed as the end all be all. It's like if you aren't an entrepreneur, then you're not living your full potential and you're just working for the man and you're just some kind of lemming and they're going to march you off the cliff someday. And it's like, maybe, but not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone is meant to own their own business. Like I know plenty of guys who are plumbers and electricians who are just fine working for some guy making 6 figures a year, which is great money, right? Making 6 figures a year, unclogging people's toilets.
right.
And they love it, right? They don't have any problem with that. And they have no desire whatsoever to go out and start their own company because they don't want the headache. And that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's very clear. And well, I pick on this on a regular basis in some of my own trainings, but I think the other thing is that there's a huge mismatch because most of the educational process is training you to be an employee. And you do not want to bring that behavior to self-employment because, again, you're going to build a job, not a business. And then it's that Looney Tunes of just digging the hole deeper, like while burying yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tricky because there's no clear educational process of how to rethink everything that you do and move towards the entrepreneurial idea.
Well, and I completely agree with that. And just adding to it, I think that it's impossible, frankly, to do something like that because when you look at it foundationally, people don't change in that they have these insatiable wants and they have the survival drive. So they want to find things that make their life easier and better, but it's really difficult to understand what that is and get that out. So it's like once we get businesses to 7 figures, it's really easy, quite frankly, to scale them. It's just an equation that you have to put in. But it's getting to that point that takes a lot of work and a lot of risk and a lot of trial and error and a lot of stamina. And I don't know that you can train for that. I think that is something that has to be an intrinsic motivation. Not that you can't develop that motivation over time. I think the guy who started Raising Cane's, he worked as like an oil well roughneck for a while to help fund his restaurant because like he knew that it was a good idea and just he couldn't find any investors. So he did that. That's the kind of stamina I'm talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have that impetus, that intrinsic motivation, it works out. But you can't expect that society telling you have to be an entrepreneur is that motivation.
Right. Which makes it interesting because one of the things I hear a lot of the time, especially Rob, when you're leaning into this culture side of it, it's like you do want to try and find and hire people who have that like self-driven part, that internal motivation, but it's just dedicated towards a common cause instead of an individual one.
Right. right? Where do they find their motivation, their values match to the company? Wow. If you get that right, your retention goes up, your discretionary effort gets captured, actually gets donated freely. Think of it that way, right? And you gain top line, bottom line, quality, all of it, right? Like there's a reason people work in the not-for-profit sector work in the not-for-profit sector.
Right.
That's high altruism drive,
Yeah.
right? There's a reason a lot of doctors become doctors. That's high altruism drive too.
Right.
Bankers become bankers. That's high commerce drive,
Right.
right? So it's all very well known. It's all accessible. It's all part of fit that we talk about all the time when helping with employment screening. Get the right people on the right bus at the right time.
And drive them all toward customer success. Right?
Yes. Take care of that customer, right?
Yeah. That's brilliant. Anything else top of mind for you guys as we start to, end today's session? What do you want people to take home?
I think that the example of Chick-fil-A being awesome, I don't want that to be defeating for anyone. It's what they're doing is not magical. It's very doable. It's very trainable, right? Job aids, role models, coaching, leaders who will carry the torch. Figure out what your brand is going to be as you face the customer, and then put the pieces in place to make sure that gets delivered. They secret shop themselves.
Right.
Couldn't you walk into your business, secret shop it? Couldn't you have your spouse or your kids do that? Yeah. With a checklist, right? Keep the governance going, build that culture around your customer, and you can differentiate yourself, make even more top line and put even more on the bottom line. You'll get less complaints, you'll get less returns, right? And when you do get a return, this is the incredible opportunity of angry customers. When they show up and they're angry, if you have the skill to be able to turn that around, you turn that angry person into an apostle. They will become your champion. Right. You won't believe it, right? They'll tell all their friends, this went wrong and I went in and they fixed it and they comped this and that and that. Yeah, and they were so friendly, accommodating, defiant on my behalf. All the stuff we teach in service training, right? And then they, instead of telling 12 people what went wrong, they tell 12 people how amazing your business is. So yeah, customer service can matter. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to add to what Rob said, because I think you're spot on. And Rob, you said something that really resonated with me. It's that the leader has to carry the torch. Yes. You cannot expect anyone in your organization to care for your customer more than you do. And if you find someone who does, promote them. Because they will make a huge difference. They will be a make or break sort of thing in your organization.
Yep.
If they care as much about your customer and what you're doing as you do, oh geez, get out of their way, man. But you cannot expect your employees who are just coming in for a paycheck. Yeah, maybe they agree with the mission, vision, values, all of that stuff. But you can't expect them, if you're just showing up for a paycheck, if you're just doing this to get money, you can't expect any other motivation than that from the people that you lead, because leadership and energy like that is passed through osmosis.
Yep.
You can't, people will see, oh, he's just in it for the paycheck. He's just in it for the paycheck. He doesn't care about the customers. He doesn't care about the employees. You have to eat, sleep, breathe, drink, read about, obsess over, stalk, go through their garbage, your customers, because
ferociously. Yes,
because you have to care about them and be their advocate, even against your own organization sometimes, because I've said it before, I'll say it again, doing business is the privilege of
Mhm.
serving your customers and solving their problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a privilege. That is a privilege. And if you don't treat it like a privilege, they will fire you and find someone who will.
Yeah.
Get your mind right, right?
Yeah, from a systems and process perspective, that's exactly what I was going to say in different language, which is just really focus on the second half of the funnel, right? Like if half the people I met were as focused on spending time, energy, investing, whatever you want to say, into the onboarding and fulfillment side, the lifetime value side of the funnel, as they were on more leads and more sales, I think, again, double, triple, quadruple the bottom line by
Yeah.
like, how do we give as much as possible?
Yeah.
Love it.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for your time. I
love
like
this
this
thing.
when we
I
got
look forward to
fiery. There's some real energy here.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good
Fire
stuff.
and brimstone today.
Yeah.
All
Thanks so
right.
much.
See you guys.
See ya.